Helenio Herrera, the Wizard. A genius, a dictator, the most controversial manager football had ever seen. Coaching was just the beginning. He built empires through mind games, obsession, and total control.
I am very honored, but not enviable. I have much more responsibility than anyone else. For me, the maximum is always victory. Defeat is not admitted.
For Herrera, defeat was unthinkable because he had mastered something other coaches ignored: the psychology of winning.
I believe every coach of a great team should have only one goal: winning the Scudetto and every competition.
And at Inter Milan, he turned that belief into a dynasty. 3 Serie A titles, 2 European Cups, 2 Intercontinental Cups, the Grande Inter.
They've won the Italian Championship 8 times, scored over 3,000 goals, and this year they're also competing in the Champions Cup.
So how did a man born into poverty revolutionize modern football? And why does his shadow still loom over the game today? The humble beginning. Born in Buenos Aires in 1910, Herrera's childhood was defined by hunger.
I think he had to struggle since he was a child. He started working when he was 10 years old, and many times as a child we went hungry. My father was a carpenter, and when he didn't work one day, we didn't eat.
Poverty shaped him. It taught him that survival required cunning, relentless work, and an iron will. Football became his escape, but also his obsession. His playing career took him from Argentina to Morocco to France. Unremarkable as a player, Herrera understood something others didn't. Success wasn't about talent alone. It was about preparation, about psychology, about control. And when he became a coach, those lessons would change football forever. The arrival. By 1958, FC Barcelona was in crisis. The club was struggling, the atmosphere toxic, players demoralized.
When you started at Barcelona, what situation did you find in the squad? It was very bad. The result was so poor. So at Les Cours, I started working with them, speaking to players individually about what was happening at the old stadium. This was when the new stadium was being inaugurated. But we had a good team, and soon the team started winning. We won 2 titles, which is difficult. The value of winning 2 titles is significant. We had a great team, very well balanced.
Herrera walked into the old Les Cours Stadium and saw what others couldn't: a sleeping giant waiting to be awakened. He had world-class players like Kubala, talented Catalans like Segura and Olivella, but they lacked belief. They lacked discipline. That was about to change. The revolutionary. Herrera walked into Barcelona and tore down everything. His methods were extreme: intense training, psychological warfare, obsessive preparation. And he made bold predictions that newspapers devoured. The doubters laughed, but Herrera was building something: confidence, belief, destiny. The results proved him right. Barcelona destroyed Real Madrid 4-0 in the Copa del Rey, then humiliated them 5-2 at Camp Nou.
We eliminated Madrid, winning 4-2 at the Bernabeu, which made history. We were losing 2-0 in the first half, but I could see that Madrid was already falling and we were doing well. The players were standing very steady. According to us, we'll win for sure.
2 league titles, 1 Copa del Rey. In 3 years, Herrera had turned Barcelona into champions.
Why do they call you the Wizard? They've already called me that in France, Spain, and Italy, because every club I coach with the same players greatly increases their performance, their revenue, and their prestige.
Everywhere he went, the pattern repeated. The same players, better results. It wasn't magic, it was method. But his revolution was just beginning. The call to Inter. In 1960, Angelo Moratti, one of Italy's wealthiest industrialists, took control of Inter Milan. His vision was clear: build the greatest team in the world.
Inter was founded in 1908, and it was one of the oldest and most prestigious clubs in Italian football. What Inter will never lose is its character and fighting spirit.
Moratti needed a general to lead his army. He chose Herrera. The move shocked Barcelona. Herrera left suddenly, controversially, but Inter offered something Barcelona couldn't: unlimited resources and total control. A massive sports center at Appiana Gentile, state-of-the-art facilities, the best medical care money could buy, and most importantly, complete authority. Moratti wasn't building a team. He was building an empire. The mission was set. Herrera would build a dynasty. The Dictator. Herrera's first year at Inter set shockwaves through Italian football, not because of victories, but because of ruthlessness. He controlled players absolutely, and if you didn't meet his standards, he crushed you. Young Sandro Mazzola learned that the hard way. After being ignored and humiliated for months, Herrera suddenly called him up for a crucial match. But the ultimatum was brutal.
He asked if I felt like playing in Palermo, where they play very physically. I was a bit unprepared, but stubborn. He told me, if you play badly, you never play again in the first team. And you can't even go to Como. You stay here the whole year without playing. I didn't know the rules, but said yes.
This was psychological warfare. Play perfectly or your career ends. No second chances, no mercy. Herrera had an almost mystical view of football. A player's focus belonged solely to the game. Distractions were unforgivable. So when a star striker like Angelillo fell for a nightclub dancer, it was more than disappointing. It was betrayal. Angelillo would party all night, then stumble into training still wearing his tuxedo, reeking of smoke and alcohol. Herrera's response was swift and merciless. Players who didn't submit were cast aside. No matter how talented, no matter how popular, the press exploded. Fans protested, but Herrera didn't flinch. This was the Dictator, and his players would learn to fear him, respect him, and eventually worship him. The method. But Herrera was more than a disciplinarian. He was a visionary who revolutionized how football was played and prepared. In Italy, training meant long-distance running, 30, 40 minutes of continuous jogging. Herrera thought that was madness.
His strength was his training system. Back then, teams trained doing 30 to 40 minutes of continuous running. But he imposed everything on speed and immediately with the ball.
But then came his most revolutionary innovation, something no one had ever seen before.
He would line up 11 players without an opponent. He'd throw the ball to the goalkeeper and call out instructions. While the ball was moving, players had to raise their heads and call for it.
Training without opposition. It sounded absurd, but it taught players to think faster, react quicker, communicate as one organism. They learned to anticipate movement, to play with their hands up, to move in perfect synchronization. Inter became a machine. Precise, relentless, unstoppable. The psychologist. Herrera understood something most coaches ignored. Football was won in the mind before it was won on the pitch.
He used to say things we didn't understand back then. Later, I realized what he meant. I train your head first, then your legs. Today, we'd call that sports psychology. In simple terms, he used to say on the pitch, I make you do certain things to train your mind first, so you can think and react before your opponent.
Herrera focused on mental preparation before physical preparation. It was revolutionary, and he drilled it into his players relentlessly.
Every man must have a goal, and yours is the Scudetto. In football, the one who doesn't give everything gives nothing. Think fast, run fast, play fast.
These weren't only motivational slogans, they were commands, standards, non-negotiable truths that Herrera burned into his players' minds. But his real genius was understanding each player individually, knowing exactly what psychological buttons to push. Sandro Mazzola, son of the legendary Valentino Mazzola, was struggling. Herrera ignored him, left him out of training camps, pushed him to the edge of quitting. Then suddenly, after Mazzola scored 2 goals in a reserve match, Herrera called him up for a crucial game. The teenager was terrified. One mistake and his career was over. But once Mazzola proved himself, Herrera's approach changed completely.
He looked at me and said, "Play as second striker because I'll show you how to be a great striker." He was right. He prepared us mentally before the legs.
It was psychological warfare. Break them down, then build them back up. Stronger, hungrier, convinced they were invincible. And it worked. Mazzola became one of Inter's greatest ever players, the tactician. But Herrera's revolution was more than mental. It was tactical. Italian football worshipped defense. Caution was doctrine. Catenaccio was king. But Herrera preached something dangerous: vertical football. While others saw Inter as a defensive machine, Herrera deployed all his offensive potential. Facchetti bombing forward from left back as an attacking weapon, Suarez orchestrating from deep like a conductor, Mazzola and Jair combining in devastating attacks, Corso delivering pinpoint crosses from the wing. This wasn't Catenaccio. This was total football before total football existed. And Herrera prepared for opponents like no coach ever had. His obsession with detail bordered on madness.
He was the kind of person who would travel day and night by car to Yugoslavia just to watch an opponent's training for the Champions Cup. He'd personally meet the Yugoslav coach, knowing his team would soon face him. He built countless connections. So in almost every country, he had a friend, coach, or player who kept in touch and shared insights with him.
This was professional espionage at its finest. Herrera left nothing to chance. No detail too small, no advantage too minor.
When we played foreign teams, he'd even tell us how much taller the player is, their hair color and eye color. That shows how professional and clever he was.
When Inter walked onto the pitch, they already knew everything about their opponents. Herrera had given them the blueprint for victory before the match even started. May 27, 1964. Vienna. Inter Milan versus Real Madrid in the European Cup final. Real Madrid, the 5-time champions, the kings of Europe, were the favorites. But Herrera spent weeks preparing his players psychologically. He told them they'd already won. He made them believe they were invincible. Inter won 3-1. Herrera had taken 15 players to Madrid and declared with absolute confidence, "We have faith because they played their cards in Buenos Aires. We played ours here, and we'll play them in Madrid." The prophecy came true. The dynasty had begun. 1 year later, they faced an even greater test. Benfica, led by the legendary Eusebio in the European Cup final at San Siro, in front of 89,000 roaring fans.
The 1965 final at San Siro against Benfica, an incredibly strong team with players like Eusebio and Colonna, was unforgettable. It was the great Inter of Helenio Herrera with unforgettable players. Even now, I get goosebumps thinking about those matches.
Benfica had reached 4 European Cup finals in 5 years. They were battle-tested, dangerous, led by one of the greatest players in the world. But this was Herrera's fortress. This was Inter's moment. The match was played in a rainstorm. The pitch was a swamp. Technical football became nearly impossible. But Inter found a way.
It was the first time the stadium was full with all the lights. Even though it was raining, it moved us a lot and we played very tense. We were two teams that knew each other well. The marking of Eusebio was crucial. It limited him, though canceling Eusebio was impossible. Bedin picked him up in his own half, perhaps the most important move. Their central defender went in goal after they went down to 10 men. And we barely managed to score the goal through Corso's combination.
Inter won 1-0. Back-to-back European Cups. The Grande Inter was born. In 7 years with Herrera, Inter won 3 Serie A titles, 2 European Cups, and 2 Intercontinental Cups. They were the best team in the world, and everyone knew it. The showman. But Herrera's mastery went beyond tactical genius. He was a master of media manipulation. Despite being banned from giving interviews, Don Helenio couldn't resist the microphone. It was like a magnet to him. Just tease him a little, and he'd give you straight answers. The press loved him. The headlines wrote themselves. His sayings became legendary. We will win without getting off the bus.
Every coach in Italy, even today, owes him a debt of gratitude. He made coaches more famous than the players themselves. He brought Nerio Rocco into this new way of thinking too. Financially, he was the one who truly shaped the modern image of coach. And he had this remarkable quality. Whenever he spoke to the press, he blamed everything except his players and the club.
Herrera protected his players publicly while demanding everything from them privately. It was brilliant psychology, and it worked.
It was better to play with 10 players because it is normal not to unjustly send off players. And then the team reacted to the pressure. And so we agreed it was better, and we won. And they will need the one who is even better with 10 than with 11.
Some called it arrogance, others called it genius. Herrera called it psychology. He created his own legend, and the world couldn't look away. The legacy. By 1967, the Grande Inter era was over. Herrera moved on, but his impact never faded. Decades later, another controversial coach arrived at Inter, Jose Mourinho, and everyone saw parallels.
Herrera told me Facchetti had his notebooks. He said, I knew everything about opponents, everything about us, all the limits we shouldn't set ourselves.
The same obsessive preparation, the same psychological mastery.
That handcuff move, in my opinion, will go down in football history. And when in the second derby, he stood up like a conductor leading and directing 85,000 people at San Siro.
Mourinho's theatrics at San Siro weren't innovation. They were inheritance. Herrera had written the playbook decades earlier, but his influence reached far beyond one discipline. He transformed coaching itself.
This, in my opinion, is what the great and fundamental innovations this coach brought, both his training methods and psychological mastery. Those two elements are what truly make the difference in football.
Before Herrera, coaches were background figures. After him, they became architects of dynasties. The Dictator, the Wizard, the Revolutionary. 7 years, 2 European Cups, a legacy that still echoes through every touchline today.